Hello YouTube. It's not a new day. Anyway, right now I am going to read Dinky Doo's Father Revealed. Yeah, I went there, guys. I went there. Let's begin. Mom, who's my father? Ditsy Doo paused in making dinner. The gray Pegasus's body stiffening as her eyes widened in shock. Turning, she looked at her daughter Dinky Doo and blinked slowly. She held her breath for a moment, slowly counting to 5 before letting it out. In her head, she had always known this day would come, but she had hoped her little filly would be older. Ditsy Doo knew about how the other foals made fun of her due to her mother being special. As cruel as foals Dinky's age were, they would grow out of this stage eventually. The real painful barbs were from mares and stallions around town. The aghast looks and backhanded compliments towards them, both when they were out shopping or having dinner. They whispered conversations and darted looks. That hurt them far more because at times they would even say things to their faces. But they long ago stopped letting it faze them. Dinky knew all too well. Her mother understood and comprehended far more than the other ponies in town realized. But in public, the pair just kept smiling, sometimes even thanking others for their insults and backhanded compliments, and how wonderful it is Pegasus, as special as her, could raise a normal unicorn filly. But in all this time, Ditsy was waiting for this day. When other ponies would talk about their fathers, Dinky would always gush about her mother, the male pony. But the subject of her father had never been brought up. As such, a slimmer hope had risen in the Pegasus that this day might never arrive. Mom? Ditsy trotted over, resting her left forehoof on her mother's shoulder with a worried look. If you don't want to talk about it. Ditsy looked at her daughter, a sad look in her eyes as she shook her head. Turning off the stove, she motioned for her daughter to follow. The muffins told me that you'd want to know this someday, about how unicorn fillies fill life with joy. The gray Pegasus began to lead Dinky towards her bedroom as she walked. My most special muffin of goodness should know about the day I met her muffin sire of good joy. Dinky followed quietly as she nodded. The young Pegasus, oh god, I can't read. Dinky followed silently as she nodded. The young Pegasus used to her mother's unique way of talking after a lifetime. She was born with a lazy eye and had mental problems thanks to something called foul alcohol syndrome. Uncle Quarterback told Dinky that her mom used to be a lot worse when she was younger, which frightened the young foal to think about. As they entered Ditsy's room, the walls were decorated with crayon pictures of all the ponies in town Ditsy thought of as her friends. They were actually quite well drawn, despite the medium used. Every time her mother met a new pony, she'd always draw him or her that night. It was one of the many quirks that Ditsy loved about her mom and made her unique. Trotting over to her bed, Ditsy pulled aside the muffin-patterned bedspread and crawled under the bed. After a moment, she pushed a small cardboard box out from under the bed, squirming out afterwards. Shaking the dust off her body, she pushed the box towards her daughter as she swallowed hard. All the answers about space and flying balloons are in this box, my muffin. I'll leave to finish making the tasty delights of food and happiness while you learn the science. Dinky nodded, watching her mother leave before looking back at the box. Most of her mother's possessions had an innocent, filly-like quality to them, but this box seemed outside of the room rather than a part of it. The box itself was old and tattered, as it had been moved many times. Using a forehoof, the filly gently pushed the lid off the box and peered inside. The small box didn't hold much, just a scroll and some photos. Taking out the first, she saw a picture of her mother when she was younger on a farm with other ponies. Some earth ponies, some pegasi, and some unicorns. They were all laughing and smiling at a picnic, and Dinky felt a tear brim over her eye to see her mother so happy. But something else caught her eye. She had to stare closer to see if she saw it right. Yes, most of the ponies in the photo, like her mother, had the same look in their eyes as her mother Ditsy had. Some were also in wheelchairs, one was on crutches, but all the ponies, it seemed, were as special as her mother. She sat the first photo in the box and drew out the second before pausing. There, in this photo, was her mother hugging a male unicorn next to a tree. His body was tan, and he had a golden brown mane and tail. The thing that caught her attention most was the fact his cutie mark was a muffin. She stared for the longest time at the photo, her hopes trembling as she stared at the tree. Yes, it looked to be on the same farm. Carved into a tree was a crude heart with BM plus DD carved into the heart. It was not the best penmanship by far, but the sentiment was clear. This was a photo of her father. Standing, Dinky's mind reeled with the implications. She had a unicorn father, and her mother had met her at some farm where every pony had been special like her. Suddenly, the years of her mother driving her to study more was making sense. She'd always assumed that it was just because her mother was fearful she'd end up like her, as unlikely as that is. But the two parents from such a place, the truth was an explosion in her mind. She'd beaten the odds and made her mother so proud by being one of the top students in school. It's no wonder her mother checked in on her every day while delivering her mail. Setting the other photo in the box, Ditsy's body gave a nervous shudder as she stared at the scroll. Did she really want to do this? Part of her wanted to unravel the scroll now and start reading, but a twinge of fear ran through her head. After this, there would be no going back. She could no longer spend the nights dreaming away that her father was like. She'd know for sure. She was ready to forego illusion and fantasy for cold reality. Grasping the scroll, she gave a nod to herself. She had to know, not just for herself, but for her mother, too. Her mother gave up so much for her, and had put on such a brave face for the world. And her mom had kept this box safe just for her to learn the truth. She owed it to her mom. Oh, God. She owed it to her mom to follow this to the end. Opening the scroll, Dinky settled onto the floor on her abdomen and began to read. Dinky, I'm writing this letter to you so you'll one day know who your father is. I'm hoping I gave you this box and you're reading it now. If you found this box by accident digging around in my room, then you're grounded. Go to your room and wait for me to get home. Dinky gave a light chuckle, smiling to herself at the note. Even in writing, her mother did have a fun sense of humor at times. Shaking her head, she turned back the scroll and read more. When I graduated school, my parents just died the year working as weather ponies. Quarterback had started doing construction, and I was really hopeful. I had gotten in trouble doing the most basic of chores. I couldn't make out more than 2 words. Big Bro's job needed him to go to Philadelphia to help build a new school for a year. So he told me I was going to live in a special place that could help me. That was when I was introduced to the farm. The farm was on the outskirts of Coltland and was set up to help special ponies learn to be self-sufficient. But I didn't know this at the time. No, all I knew was... Oh, God. This is kind of saddening right here. Anyway. No, all I knew was the last of my family was leaving me there, and I thought it was because they didn't love me no more. I spent the first week in my room, refusing to come out even for meals. Every day I just remained huddled under my covers, ignoring everyone and everything. At the end of the week, I heard a soft knock on my door. Then I heard someone shuffle slowly into the room before feeling something placed on my bed. Once the shuffling left, I gave a sniff from under my covers and smelled the most delicious of scents. Poking my muzzle out from under the covers, I saw a mysterious visitor had left a basket of muffins on my bed. My stomach growled at me. So, needing a food and water after a week of fasting. Without care for anything else, I dug my muzzle into the basket and began to happily eat the baked delights. Of course, after not eating for so long, I should have paced myself. I ended up eating so much so fast I gave myself an upset stomach that lasted long into the night. Dinky sighed, resting her forehoof on her temple as she shook her head. She had seen results of her mother eating too many muffins at a time, and had taken to keeping a large amount of special pink potion from the nurse ponies, made in bulk just for their household. Oh, Mom, she whispered to herself, that's so like you. The next morning I felt hungry again, so slowly I trotted out of my room to the main living area. The farm's main house was where we all lived. It had been set up so every pony's room opened to the main area where they had food, games, and health classes. Several ponies saw me as I left the room and gave a friendly wave of a hoof. I balked slightly, almost ready to bolt back to my room. But then a nurse pony saw me and gave me the nicest smile, trotting over to give me a welcome. She explained about the farm, and that my brother had left me here not as a punishment, but rather as a reward to become a better pony. She began to lead me about the farm, tugging at me at times as she showed me everything the farm had to offer. I slowly began to come out of my shell at the farm. I began to learn how to live by myself. They started me slow, teaching me how to cook and how to help out on the farm's chores. They also began to teach me how to fly properly, something that have been a challenge in school due to my lazy eye. I learned the painstaking test of overcompensating for depth perception, and how to think that objects could be much closer than they seemed. And every evening after a long day, I always found a new basket of muffins in my bed waiting for me. At first I thought they were from my brother Quarterback, and he was watching out for me, stopping by to see if I was okay. That all changed at the start of the summer. It was a sunny day, and Celestia's sun was shining over us as we made our way toward the field. We'd finished all the day's lessons and chores early, so we were having a picnic to celebrate our hard work. Speedy Wheels was also about to graduate, and we all wanted to wish him good luck. He was born with something called palsy, and lived his life in a wheelchair. But he'd been at the farm for 2 years, and he had found a way past his chair to find out he was quite talented at delivering things. He might sit in a chair, but he could still go almost anywhere. I'd been helping him out, finding out I also had a knack for delivering things as well. Between the two of us, there wasn't any delivery on farm that couldn't reach its destination. We were an unstoppable duo. But it was a bit of fear that I knew with his leaving. Soon, every one of the farm's deliveries and passing out letters from home would fall to me alone. But we were all for Speedy, nonetheless. The farm had helped him find a job in Coltland with a delivery company, and he had even got him a house out of town. And had even got him a house of his own. There we go. It was going to be a big transition for him as well as for us. But he was one of the lucky ones. He was going to get to leave. Some at the farm could never make it that far, and were here until they passed on. But spirits were high that day, and happily spilled out in the field to play. Even the nurses were relaxing, playing along with our games and joyous sounds blaring across the nearby hills. Dinky smiled, curling up a bit on the floor. She nodded herself. She could feel her mom's joy at reading this. Who felt a longing to have gotten to see her mother like this, not having to put on a brave face every day, but honestly happy of those who made fun of her. But honestly happy with no one around who made fun of her. Okay, so I'm reaching about the 13-minute mark here. Actually, I've passed it. So we'll continue in part 2, which we'll start out with another section from Ditzy Doo's letter. Okay. Be ready.